This is the original Cayman. Today we're going to spend a few minutes looking at how the Cayman's changed and how it's changed from a rather ugly looking car, in my opinion, to a rather gorgeous looking car, in my opinion. So there's the original Cayman. It's not quite as ugly as the original Boxster. Let's have a quick look at that. Early Boxster. Oof, that is a super ugly looking car. Really. Okay, it's maybe not in the best of shape, but however, the proportions of this car are just not good. I had the chance to buy this car. I was living in America about 20 years ago, around about when the car came out. It was around about the same price as the car I did buy, and I'm sure it was a very good driving car, but I just couldn't cope with the way it looked. This angle here is way too steep, and this angle here, the way the rear end comes down, is way too abrupt as well. Let's get back to the Cayman. So the Cayman did come out quite a few years after the Boxster, so the angles weren't quite as abrupt as they were on the Boxster. However, of course, they naturally had to differentiate this car from a 911, which means that it's always been the case that a lot of people, might not be the case today, but originally it was the case that a lot of people said the Cayman was the Porsche man, the poor man's 911. I would tend to agree with that. There's no reason why you would buy this car back then, because the 911 was a far superior car and it was certainly an awful lot better looking. Again, the angles, the abruptness here, the sharpness of the change in angle here. The windscreen goes up quite steep, and then the change, the rear window is quite small, and the wing is quite drastic. It just doesn't sit right. To have a look at an actual car, there it is. It doesn't look any better in real life. The angle and the way the roof eventually changes to the rear window and hits the rear wing, it just hits it way too soon. Of course, a 911 would be coming all the way down to the back, and a 911 wouldn't have this out of proportion rear wing. The 911 obviously kind of fills the rear wing from the roof panel all the way down. Well, that was the early Cayman. The previous, not the current, but the previous Cayman did correct an awful lot of those faults, and I think it became quite a good looking car. If we lay them side by side, we can see they did actually change the front. Here you can see on the right hand side there, the front was quite a gradual slope coming down to the front of the car. In the 981, it's gone back to an abrupt end, which makes it look quite sporty and quite aggressive, you could say. But the biggest change was at the back. Straight away you can see this rear quarter panel, rear quarter window has become from being quite short to being a good bit wider. But even before that, let's look at the angles here. This changes from going up quite steeply and then narrowing off very, very quickly. Here, if you follow the line, it's much smoother. It's almost like an arc. That looks far superior. Then, the way the roof comes down, all following this same angle, the way the roof comes down, and like a 911, it meets the end without an abrupt change, whereas with the original car, it didn't. This comes down and it meets the wheel arch just after the rear wheel. Quite a big change. And then the way the bulbous tail lights and the end of the car finish off are also changed. The only thing I personally don't like in the 981, the 981, yes, which is a great car, especially with the 6-valve engine, which it had, is the way the spoiler came through the rear lights. I'm not sure whose idea that was, but that's the only detail of that car that I wasn't enamoured with. If we have a quick look to the 718, which is the current Cayman, if it's going to work on the 3D configurator in Miami Blue, although it doesn't look like it's in Miami Blue there, but you'll see it is in a moment. Wow, that is an impressive car. So, so now we can see the tail lights became an awful lot narrower. The other tail lights would have come up to here. The front, instead of being quite abrupt and quite aggressive, has now mellowed. It's got a more of the original angle, to be honest. This car does actually have the sports design pack, which you can easily tell at the back, because if it's specced in black, you get this black line here, and the under diffusers become the same colour as the body. So the real difference between the rear spoiler, well, the lights now, the spoiler ends here, it doesn't continue into the lights, a much cleaner design. So really the only, well, the main difference now between a 911 and a Cayman is the way the roof comes down at a narrow angle, whereas on a 911 this would come down here. So it is actually a wider car. So that's why this car in many ways does feel more nimble than a 911. So therefore you're left with these quite wide and I still think slightly unattractive wheel arches, but it is an awful lot better looking than it used to be. At the front, because it has the sports design package, again the under here is slightly different, but otherwise it's not that much difference. So please leave your comments down below. See if you agree with the main differences to the Cayman over the years, and thank you very much for listening.